Welcome everyone to the Urban Transitions Alliance webinar on exploring the equity angle in urban transitions. My name is Rebecca Wessinghage and I work at the ICLE World Secretariat. The Urban Transitions Alliance is a knowledge exchange network of industrial legacy cities. These are cities whose historic development has been strongly impacted by industrialization. It has shown over the past 2 years of our work that a common challenge among these cities is social inequality between different districts and neighborhoods. This issue is strongly linked to former workers' districts in these cities, often located next to former mines or steel mills. With the industrialization, these districts were specifically hit by job loss and unemployment. The equity aspect of urban transitions therefore constitutes a joint priority in these cities and will guide our thematic work in the upcoming years. Today we are excited to learn from 7 different member cities how they consider equity in their sustainability work. We will start with a wider introduction of the sustainability transition in the city of Turku, the newest member to the Alliance.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Nice to meet everyone. So we are 3 people here speaking from this microphone. So my name is Tiina Viikman from the city of Turku in southwest Finland. I work as a senior specialist in climate, circular economy and sustainability in the city development group of the central administration in the city of Turku. And my colleagues can introduce themselves here as well.
Hello, my name is Krista. I work at the central administration as well within the city development, and my specialty is the promotion of well-being and health.
Hi, my name is Teresia. I also work in the city development group, and my specialty is localizing the SDGs.
Great. I hope you can hear us okay and that the voice isn't going round or anything.
You're totally fine.
Great, thank you. So let me start. We can actually, I will always ask you to switch the slide so we can go forward to the next slide actually already, as this was the introduction slide. So if you can change the slide. Hello. Okay, good. Maybe it's taking a bit. So the previous, yes, thank you. City of Turku may be a new familiarity to the participants here and to the UTA network. So I'll just really briefly introduce the city of Turku and also just very briefly, as we have a few minutes here only, share our transition story by a few bullet points. So the city of Turku is a coastal city, the oldest city in Finland actually, with almost 200,000 residents in the city and then over 300,000 residents in the kind of greater region of Turku. And actually what's interesting is that every 4th citizen approximately in Turku is a student. So that's something special that we have here. Turku is a cultural city and we have also been the European cultural capital in 2007, for example. We have 130 nationalities and 105 languages are spoken in Turku, so quite the international city we have here. So Turku is a city of science and education, and we have 6 higher education institutions in the city, including both a Swedish and Finnish university. And we are, especially in industry, we have know-how in manufacturing, maritime and creative industries. And actually what's important to notice is that Southwest Finland generally is undergoing a positive structural change. And kind of the risk economic growth of the rest of Finland have created many new jobs here as well. And for example, the maritime industry is seeking new employees through different campaigns and arranged in different parts of the country. So we have quite a good positive structural change going on here. And for example, maritime and automobile industry are growing fast. And for example, pharmaceutical and construction industries are expanding as well. And we can go to the next slide, and I will share just briefly our transition story. Well, maybe I could start by saying that Turku has maybe a different approach to the transition story than many cities worldwide, or at least in Europe. So we have foundational industries, as I said, such as manufacturing, maritime, and creativity that continue to grow and still form kind of the basis of the economy. So unlike many cities, Turku didn't develop by transitioning from one type of industry to another, but continues to grow the industries that have been foundational for decades and hundreds of years, actually, some of them. But at the same time, we have challenges in our positive structural change as well. So technology and digitalization and service industries are growing very fast right now, and that also creates a shortage of professionals in the region. So that's one important thing to notice, especially in the maritime industry and IT sector. And also the changing demographics and the increasingly heterogeneous population may kind of render the prevention of social exclusion and meeting citizens' different expectations. So there are quite different expectations within, like, among different citizens in the city and in the region. And the aging population also implies kind of a demographic dependency, and that's also a challenge to notice. And then we are also investing in sustainable growth. So Turku aims to be carbon neutral already by 2029. So in 10 years, we should be carbon neutral. And so far, we have managed to reduce our emissions by approximately 30% from the 1990 level. So we are good on our way, but lots to do still. And then we also have an objective to become climate positive thereafter with negative net emissions. And moreover, a resource-wise city by 2040, which means no emissions, no waste, and sustainable use of natural resources. Next slide, please. Very briefly on how Turku will look in 2029, in 10 years. We have this year as a focal point for examining the city strategy and Turku's future, because Turku will turn 800 years in 2029. So that's an important year for us. And the city strategy aims at that year right now. And the strategy is supported by 2 strategic programs, so well-being and activity, and then the other one being competitiveness and sustainable growth. And to just raise 2 examples of important action plans approved by the City Council to meet these strategic goals, we have the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan approved in 2018, and then we have also action plan for prevention of discrimination and exclusion that was approved actually in January this year. And the city also works with different spearhead projects derived from the strategy. So we are heavily developing the city center, and we have a very active science park with the Turku business region collaboration with a cluster of different innovation activities, for example, in clean tech and bio and circular economy as well, and health and well-being. And then we have the Smart and Wise Turku spearhead project as a third one that uses collected data to create new operational models, kind of in a way that actively involves citizens and stakeholders in the transition, in the change. So, and we have this, we think it's a really nice slogan that we have, that we are the boldest city in Finland, as we are also the oldest city in Finland. So thank you very much.
Okay, this is Anne Dratty. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at the City of Baltimore. And my presentation is going to be much different. It's going to be more of a case study of a particular thing than an overview of the city. So you can go to the next slide. We have a city of about 600,000 people, 63% that are Black, and it's a very racially divided city. We are an old industrial city that is still losing population because jobs have left, industry has left, and we don't have a lot of industry coming back in. So our jobs have gone to the suburbs, and many of our people have moved there as well. What I'm going to talk about today is the 2019 sustainability plan. We had a 2009, and we've just updated our plan through using an equity lens. So you're looking at the plan framework in the 6 different topic areas with 23 different chapters. And it took us 2.5 years to do outreach, and we planned 1 year, and it took 2.5. So we did a very deep dive in order to hear the voices of the city that had traditionally not been heard before. We created a survey and trained 125 residents to go out and talk to their neighbors, sitting on the street corners or at football games and at farmers markets, to hear what they thought about a future for a sustainable and equitable city. And we also talked to hundreds and hundreds of subject matter experts and had working groups and website comments. And we learned things and we collected demographics along the way. So we know the race, the age, the gender, the neighborhood, whether they're employed. We know that about all the people who responded to the survey. One of the things we did find out was that we asked, what do you like most about your neighborhood and what do you like least, were 2 of the questions. And across all demographics, people wanted to be connected to their neighbors. It was the number 1 thing that stood out in the whole plan that everybody agreed upon, being connected to neighbors. So our first topic in the plan you see is neighbors there. And we found out from children or people under 18 that the thing they liked most about their neighborhood was quiet, and the thing they liked least was noise. So we have a noise chapter there. You can go on to the next. We have a 21-member sustainability commission that's appointed by the mayor, and in the plan we created some big audacious commitments. 3 of them: to be a commitment to be transparent, which means being honest about our past, which is what we learn in equity work. The first thing you have to do is know how you got there, what your history is, and recognize it and be honest about it. Recognizing the commitment to be transparent is part of our interconnectedness and our willingness to share power with other people who have been traditionally not been in a position of power. We made a commitment to collaborate, which is thinking and working differently and working together and working to support change at the local level. And then the third commitment we made was a commitment to be accountable, which is really important that we found. So to go out publicly and ask, how are we doing with this plan? Are we doing what we said we were going to do? What are the unintended consequences? Reassess everything and ask people to tell us, not only being accountable to ourselves, but what can we do better? And we want to speak in terms that are understandable, humanize our data, and take responsibility for caring for our shared home. Next slide. So we use this as our social media. We put these different actions in our plan out, and at all our events, we take photos of people and blast and have them share this on social media, and we did the same thing. So this is one of our programs that we push out. The next slide. And our city is a map of our city, and you see the tan outline, and we call that a butterfly. It's called the black, we call it here loosely termed the black butterfly. And down between the middle of the butterfly where it's white and then it turns a little to the right, we call that the white L, where the white people live and generally, and where the black folks live. And in 1910, we enacted legislation to promote racial segregation of neighborhoods. It was one of the first such legislations in the country. And when South Africa was looking to do apartheid, they called us, got in touch with Baltimore and asked us how we had enacted this legislation. So we're a really historically poor model for the world in terms of this legislation. And Even in the 1930s, when people were trying to get houses, there was racial discrimination against mortgage lending in certain neighborhoods, which has shaped the demographic and wealth patterns in our city today, which you see here. So any map we look at and we overlay income or tree canopy, access to grocery stores, this tan part shows up over and over and over again as having lack of resources and being disinvested for years. This is one of the reasons that we're really focused on equity in our city, and we use what we call a targeted universalist strategy, which is inclusive of the needs of both the dominant and the marginal groups, but we pay particular attention to the marginal group, in our actions and strategies in the plan. So the plan is a citywide plan adopted by the City Council, approved by the mayor, and it's been a lead out there for our city in an attempt to be honest and address the needs and aspirations of our diverse population and engage residents meaningfully and expand their access to power and resources. So what we say, the more equitable our city, the more sustainable.
Hello, my name is Dirk van Bracht. I'm working in the department from Michael Leichner and Christian Nede in the Department of Climate Protection, Climate Adaptation and Noise. For introduce yourself, please, Michael and Christian, maybe you introduce yourself too.
Yeah, I'm on the line, Michael Leichner. I'm the head of the department. Okay. Christian?
Hello, I'm Chris. Christian Nele, it's pronounced in German, but Chris is much easier on international calls, and I work here at this department with my colleagues.
Okay. Then I will start with the presentation. Now we see a third presentation. It's also different to the others. I try to tell you what is the equity, or where we try to bring equity in our department. Please slide the next. Yes. And the question was, what is our main target and where we are in? We are working in, or I'd say so. Our main SDGs are the affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, and the responsible consumption and production, also climate action. But we affect, when we start a program or a project, we affect it in different other SDGs. Please show us the next slide, please. We affect also the SDGs, decent work and economic growth, also industry innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities and partnerships for the goals. Please show us the next slide. Here, the department's action are aligned to reflect the effects within the society. The difficulty, however, is that positive effects can lead to a worsening of the already social disadvantaged population group. Here's an example. If we we have a problem such as air pollution, hotspots, or similar mitigation in a district, the quality of life increases significantly, and our goal is to achieve it. But a higher quality of life also means that the residential location becomes more attractive and affordable housing becomes more difficult. This is particularly evident in the design of blue infrastructure. Living near water is the most expensive place to live. We have also in Dortmund an example. Please show us the next slide, then I can show the example better. One word more to Dortmund. The city of Dortmund has 600, like Baltimore, 600 inhabitants, and We have also a change in the industrial culture. Our main work was steel and coal, and also a little bit beer, but that's changed. The transformation goes to students and IT and high quality jobs. This is something about Dortmund, and here you see a project. In the past, there was an area in city of Dortmund that's called Phoenix. Phoenix was a steel production area, and we changed it to a really nice place. Show us the next slide, please. We bring on this place, this is the same place, but the picture is from today. We built a lake on it and more space for people. They can have the free time spent on it. But you see on the right photo, we have also academic living rooms, but we have a big problem. Actually, the German has a big problem that is living, cheap living for people. And what I will say is actually when we start to bring better living air to our place, like reduce noise and for a better air and do a climate adaptation program, then we bring in our city more green and blue infrastructure. And but on the other hand side is that the people is sometimes too expensive to live there because the quality to live is more or better than in the past. And that is our challenge, and a short overview about our projects. Please show us the next slide, please. Then I'm shortly finished. Thank you.
I am Ali Kroner, the Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Cincinnati. And I think maybe like Baltimore, my presentation focuses on a few specific projects we are working on. In Cincinnati, we have a population of about 300,000 people in a metro area of 2.1 million. We have deep-seated poverty issues that play out in terms of crime and health disparities. From one neighborhood to another, we have a 22-year difference in life expectancy, and we're trying to get to the root of that through our sustainability efforts. Next slide, please. I think we find it pretty easy to talk about inequity. It's very easy to point to issues of inequity, but solutions to address those problems are more challenging. And we tend to think about equity in two primary buckets. One is procedural equity, and that's including underheard voices in our process. The other is distributional equity, which is the outcomes we see in our population. One of our target areas now is energy burden. Cincinnati is, generally speaking, faced with low energy costs. However, in our low-income population, that is not the case. In fact, we have the 9th highest low-income energy burden in the US. And energy burden is defined as the cost of energy as a percentage of your income. So we've dug in to do some analysis of which pockets of our community are most faced with this issue. You can see the map here. In order to target our approach. And we have secured $1.5 million to invest in energy retrofits for individual households faced with high energy burden issues. So this problem is just taking shape. We've done this analysis. We believe this is a sweet spot between both environmental issues in terms of energy efficiency and quality of life issues for our residents. Next slide, please. So as we look at changes ahead, we are seeing an increase in heat events. And as you might imagine, those heat events hit different neighborhoods in different ways. And populations with more elderly or more diseased residents are hit harder. And I'd like to compare these two maps here. One is a land surface temperature map of Cincinnati, and the other is a map of our tree canopy. And I think you can see the inverse correlation. Where we have more trees, we have cooler land surface temperatures. We are very proud of our tree canopy. We have 40% tree canopy, which is very healthy for a US city. However, as you can see on the map on the right, some neighborhoods are not as healthy. So in our climate planning, we shoot for a 40% citywide tree canopy coverage. However, we also set a minimum threshold of 25% for any residential neighborhood. So just to be clear there, rather than a blanket approach, I think, to use Baltimore's terminology, this is targeted universalism, where we are placing specific emphasis on underserved, undertreed communities. Next slide, please. Cincinnati is in the Midwest of the US, which is also largely coal country, increasingly natural gas country. When we look at our climate strategies, the shift to renewable energy is first and foremost, and we are investing very heavily in renewables. In fact, we just signed a contract for 100 megawatts of solar energy that will feed city government and our residents. What's unique in Ohio is that we are allowed to exercise community choice aggregation. We are one of a handful of states that are able to do so. This means that our residents have voted to give city government the ability to purchase power on their behalf. And when we have so much purchasing power, we get economy of scale pricing. So we are able to purchase 100% renewable electricity delivered to our residents. And because of that bulk buying power, that power is delivered to those homes and businesses at a price that is approximately 8 to 10% less than what they would pay for conventional coal or natural gas energy. So these are three ways that we are specifically targeting inequities via our climate strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Some of you I already know. Nice to meet you again, and great to meet all these new participants from Finland and everywhere. So I'm missing 2 or 3 slides I forgot to send you yesterday, Rebecca. I was a little bit in a hurry. So I will introduce Essen and myself very shortly before I come to the 2 slides I have here. My name is Sebastian Schlecht. I'm from the city of Essen. We are a city in the rural area, which is quite close to Dortmund. So the history of Essen and Dortmund is maybe somehow similar in the industrialization and the way from gray industry to green and livable future. Essen is a city which has like 600,000 inhabitants. We are a city with 2 rivers. You see on the left picture the Emscher River and the Ruhr River. In between this area, our city is located in the middle of the Ruhr area, which is area with 5 million people living. So we are one of the big metropolitan areas of Europe. And we share a history of industrialization with all neighboring cities. Essen was the green capital of Europe in the year 2017. My job here is the project manager in a city department, which is responsible for several different sub-departments, which cover the green, environmental, roads and traffic, water, sports, and construction sector. And we are also the department which handled the European Green Capital application and the follow-ups also. So the Green Capital of Europe has 12 indicator system, which we are still using. The 12 indicators of the Green Capital handle different sectors like noise, water quality, air quality, CO2 emissions, jobs and education, and some more. So this is like integrated management tool. It's not covering all SDGs, but many of them. We are following up the in the history of the year 2017 with several processes following these 12 indicators, and we founded an organization which is a Green Capital Agency. And maybe this can be seen as the institution to handle most of the SDGs and strategical processes related to the Green Capital process. So let me shortly come to these slides. We have a project. I have now some examples how the city of Essen is involving people in our processes, and how do we affect people's life with strategies and the work we do. One example is the program New Ways to the Water, with which we develop green ways across all the city. The concept is to connect the north, which is more gray and poor, with a rich and green rural valley in the south. So bring the quality of life and the accessibility of green and water spaces to the north. This program is run by our Green Department with the help of our social and departments which handle unemployment and education. So we integrate jobs and education of long-term unemployed people into the construction of the green infrastructure. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So you see that we have corporations and different participants in this New Ways to the Water project since like 15 years, and we have over 500 small projects which developed to a green network you saw on the slide before. What is interesting that we can cover the whole city area with several very small projects which are able to be implemented even with a small budget, step by step. So this is not a big, the construction site is only 500 small, very small to maybe mid-size construction sites developed step by step. Maybe the next slide is showing that we do also support our citizens to do their own small projects, and they change to realize their ideas on change and transformation of our cities. So we have citizens projects, we have a volunteers program of the Green Capital, which we are still continuing. We support projects for elderly people and cycling, walking, using parking spaces, and so on. We have a maybe interesting thing is that we have a small budget for citizens project, which is now in the 3rd year, and every year we have a call for ideas, and citizens can apply with their projects to get funding for their ideas. Next slide, please.
That's actually. No.
Yeah. Right.
We also need to speed up a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, I will. So I will come to another great example from Essen. I have a history of allotment gardeners in Essen, which are really doing a great job, and they are somehow changing in the last year since the Green Capital. we have 104 associations of these allotment gardeners, and now they are doing a great education program, and they support organic agriculture, and they paired up with community gardens to be a green movement of the city of Essen, which is quite interesting because they adapted to the green capital idea in the last years very well. Before that, they've been quite on their own and do their gardens more for recreation. And now with the new, they noticed that they are in the focus of green development, and now they also take this as a tool to give their concept more weight and more sense in the discussion of climate change and Fridays for Future and all that. Yeah, so I will come to an end. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope we will meet very soon in Essen or somewhere on the internet.
OJ and Kelly, can you still hear us? Are you still with us?
Hi, can you hear me? This is Kelly. I'm on.
Hi, Kelly. Sorry.
I'm on as well. Did you hear me? No?
There we
Yes. Now we hear you
All right.
perfect.
Okay, good. I just did a whole intro, so I'm assuming no one heard that. I apologize. But
So
so
please
it's
repeat,
myself
and
and Kelly. So I do apologize for everyone. And we'll be speaking about the city of Buffalo. We'll be going through. As you see, our first slide is in front of us. And what we've done here in the city of Buffalo is we've really focused in on equity in water. Our city, of course, was founded on the basis of water and the life that it brings us. We are on the shores of Lake Erie and the Niagara River that flows it over the Niagara Falls. And in that way, the water has formed our city as well as transformed our city from being an industrial legacy city to the regenerating city that we find ourselves today. But we are not without our concerns. The city has also, over the years, suffered from years of segregation, redlining with homes and housing. And now as we welcome in new Americans, immigrants into our city at a lovely rate, we also find that our neighborhoods are suffering from aging housing stock and the things of the like. So our focus has really been on our water. This year we released our Equitable Water Future Buffalo, which we really examine how water affects our neighborhoods and how our neighborhoods are affected by the water. Next slide. So to really begin kind of making our way through our three slides here, we released this year our ROLL program. The city of Buffalo, with its aging housing stock, has concerns with our lead service lines that were traditionally installed in the early 1900s. Because of the age of our housing stock, many of our service lines are still there. Now, what we have done here in the city of Buffalo is we offer up corrosion control by way of ortho and polyphosphate to ensure that the drinking water is safe and carried to our homes. But with the presence of those lead service lines still in our spaces, and if you look at the demographics of our city, more predominant in some of the areas where we find our most vulnerable residents. So in areas where we have a higher concentration of persons of color and a lower concentration of high income individuals and a higher concentration of poverty, we find that they simply are not able to afford the cost associated with replacing a lead service line, which can run anywhere from $5,000 to $14,000 American dollars. So what we released this year in conjunction with our New York State has been our Replacing Old Lead Lines program, in which the city comes in, and once we identify that you have a leak, which is a sign of a problem, we come in and we replace the service line at no cost to the resident. We have also been exploring on a water quality level the treatment of our copper lines as well as lead lines, and we've established a institute where we're working with the local university where we are able to test the lines as well as run different chemicals to see what to make sure that where our treatment is optimized in that particular area. So this is one of the ways in which we are trying to keep our most vulnerable communities safe and focusing in on water and the drinking water that serves us. Next slide. Our other area is in the area where we call our rain check, our clean water buffalo, and that has been really a push by our mayor here, Mayor Byron W. Brown, in which we are focused in on our green infrastructure and capturing that storm water and looking at how we are preventing not only urban flooding, but that how we are bettering our neighborhoods and making our air quality as well. So we have really focused in on our rain checks program. To date, we have installed over 1,000 acres of land, capturing green infrastructure, and also keeping nearly 1 billion gallons of stormwater out of our systems. So that allows energy reduction because we don't have to treat those flows, but it also allows us to reinvest in our neighborhood in an effective way where we are dealing with stormwater and urban flooding. So I just want to leave that there, and we'd offer up having more suggestions at the end. And then thank you very much for the ability to present today. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Great. Hi, my name is Rebecca Kiernan. I'm the Principal Resilience Planner at the City of Pittsburgh. I'm also here with Grant Irvin, who I believe you all know. He's the Chief Resilience Officer.
Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about a particular project that we did last year called our Equity Indicators Report. In 2017, we released our 1PGH Resilience Strategy, which was a citywide plan to address the City of Pittsburgh's shocks and stresses. One of our major stresses that was identified was racial and economic inequity in the city. So the Equity Indicators Report was really one of the first main projects that came out of the resilience strategy. And what this project was, we were funded by CUNY, which is the City University of New York. They have an Institute for State and Local Governance. And we were funded along with a cohort of 4 other cities, including Tulsa, Dallas, St. Louis, and Oakland, to copy their framework and create our own Equity Indicators Report. We also worked with the RAND Corporation and other data providers within the city to create this report. The goal is to design a tool to measure progress towards achieving greater equity in Pittsburgh over time. So what it does is we collect data. So we had 80 indicators, which I'll get into in the next slide. And we collected data every year for 2 years so that we were able to analyze those indicators over time. Some of our constraints, as I mentioned, the data must be collected and updated annually, which kind of constrained the data sets that we were able to use. And then we maintained those same indicators over time. Next slide, please. So we took 80 different indicators and we followed our resilience strategy in the different topics that we used. So we had one topic was health, food, and safety. We had education, workforce development, and entrepreneurship, housing, transportation, infrastructure, and environment, and then civic engagement and communications. Those were the broad major topics. Then we broke those down into smaller subcategories, which are the ones that you're seeing here with the bar graphs, and then further broke those down into 80 different indicators. So there's a bunch of different subsets. What you're seeing in this slide is 2 years worth of data collection, so our 2017 report and then our 2018 report. And what we did within the report was we measured the indicators against 2 discrete groups. Most often we measured the Black versus the white population because that's where a lot of the disparities lie in Pittsburgh. Some of them were done by income, high versus low income. A couple were done by gender. And so you're seeing our scores. So the way that this was broken down by CUNY's framework was that you create a score of equity. So 0 being the most unequal and then 100 being the most equal between those two groups. And this is how the bar graphs are how those change from 2017 to 2018. The lowest scores that we had in Pittsburgh are, so we took the report, we analyzed it, we identified where the most inequity was happening between the two populations, and then we started kind of digging a little bit deeper into those issues and really use the report as a way for us to understand where we should be targeting our own resources, whether that's staff time or infrastructure or whatever. So our lowest scores in Pittsburgh were homicides. So the Black population had 58.6 per 100,000 people, whereas the white population had 4.6 per 100,000 people. Homelessness, lack of banking services, child asthma hospitalization rate was very unequal between the Black and white population, and then infant mortality as well. So we were able to take those lowest 5 and start to put staff resources on those issues. Next slide, please. And then the second report, or the second major project that came out of our resilience strategy, was something called the 1PGH investment prospectus. So this was a year-long effort with about 200 Pittsburghers that represented the nonprofit, the universities, government agencies, residents, and business to develop the 47 most pressing the city needed to address within the next 12 years. And so we were able to take those 47 projects, link them to an equity indicator so that we can start to measure our progress over time. And then this year, very recently, the city also adopted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So the slide that you're seeing here is the way that we've been able to map our projects within the 1PGH investment prospectus to an equity indicator for measurement purposes, and then also link that to the relevant sustainable development goal. And I believe that's it.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, thank you ever so much to ICLEI, who very kindly invited Bristol to listen in on your presentations. For those of you that don't know, Bristol is a city in the southwest of the UK. We have a population of just under 500,000. And some really interesting parallels with some of your cities. Like Essen, Bristol was also the European Green Capital. Our year was in 2015. We have recently launched our local voluntary reviews for the SDGs. And earlier in the year, we also launched a One City plan looking at our targets for the city up to 2050 to make Bristol a fairer, healthier and more sustainable city with reduced inequality. So your presentations have been fascinating. So I will certainly take that back to my colleagues. Thank you.
This is Ollie. I'm really struck by how different the presentations are and the conversations around equity are from one location to another. It sort of strikes me that much like climate, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, we knew there was a problem, but didn't have clear strategies that we agreed on. I feel like we're in the early days of equity planning. And so it's interesting to hear the conversations going on in different cities, struck by the different approaches.
Hi, everyone. This is Tina from Turku. I was really fascinated by your presentations. Thank you so much for the input. As a new member, it's really interesting to see the discussion here and see how cities are elaborating their equity angle as well. And I would be interested to hear from Pittsburgh regarding the 80 indicators that were determined, just about the process very briefly, that how they were determined and what kind of a process it was and how different stakeholders participated in it. Really fascinating presentation. Thank you for that.
Sure. So we worked with, I think because we had so many constraints within using the data annually, we really worked with the data providers up front to understand which indicators we could potentially use within the topics that we had. So that was a big constraint that limited us in which indicators we could use. The way that we came up with the topics was through our resilience strategy work. So we had spent 2 years working through understanding what the city's shocks and stresses were, and then how we were going to go about addressing them. So we worked with businesses, institutions, nonprofit organizations, government, but also hosted multiple residential workshops through a deliberative democracy forum, and worked with all of those entities to really understand which topics we should be focusing in on. And that's really what then laid the groundwork for what those indicators were going to be. So it's kind of been a progression between different analyses and then strategies and then the indicators report that it led to.
Great, thank you. Just a quick follow-up question. How long was the process? Maybe I missed that in the beginning for determining the indicators.
So we worked with the RAND Corporation. So we had a consultant on the project, which helped to expedite it for sure, because otherwise we probably would have taken a lot longer. The whole process took about a year to determine the indicators and then collect the data and then display it based on where we saw the largest disparity. So what we did in the beginning, actually, which was really interesting, was we had a spreadsheet of all of the 80 indicators, and then we had it displayed based on income level, gender, race, and then some of them were done by neighborhood. And we were then able to take the two groups that saw the largest disparity within those two, and then that's how we determined which way we were going to display it within the indicator, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and also thank you to all of our speakers and participants for the rich presentations and discussions of today's webinar. I think 3 main takeaways or thematic points will guide our conversations in the future. Firstly, the issue of access and affordability for certain communities, as we heard from Baltimore, Buffalo, and also Dortmund. Secondly, the question of how to engage underrepresented voices, as Olli from Cincinnati has mentioned. And thirdly, education and employment programs to create new opportunities, as we have seen in Essen and also we know from Pittsburgh. We look forward to dive into these topics in the next year. In case you have any further questions or you would like to connect to us, please feel free to do so and reach out via email or through the Transitions Alliance website. I think that's it for today. Thank you for attending and have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks all.
For the good discussion.